The lands at Hillside Farms is a 400-acre property outside of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania that was purchased 10 years ago by a group of concerned citizens for the community to teach healthy, sustainable life choices. The physical property is special because it's in a valley. It encompasses the whole valley pretty much. It's historic. It's covered with 38 buildings that are all unique and special and dated from the early 1800s to the late 1800s. And it's unique in the sense that it's a beautiful green area flanked with mountains around it. And it has these gorgeous barns and a cottage and this dairy store. And there's more to it than that. There's a feel to it that I can't really duplicate with words. When people go there, they explain to me that there's something about the experience, the feel, the freshness, the beauty. It takes them back. It's a very special place that one would have to experience. This was a privately held property since 1881, and actually before that. The family bought this in 1881, was held until 2005, when a group of us got together and met with the family and asked them if they would be interested if we could purchase it for fair market value, if they would be willing to do that, with the understanding that we would not develop it, but we would offer it to the community, and it would indeed be purchased for the community, so that it would be preserved forever and turned into a living museum. We acquired this property because 10 years ago we were looking for a place that was naturally attractive to the community, that would lure people in, so that when they came, we could give them ideas or teach them methods of living or just something to take home that might change their lives. And so this property became available because we knew the folks who owned it. They were interested in not having it get developed because a lot of it originally was developed. And we saved it because they cared enough to do that. In 2005, we needed to raise millions of dollars to begin the purchase of this property. We didn't have it. So we fundraised and we approached the family and asked them if they would enter a lease purchase arrangement, which is where you lease it for a series of years and then purchase it at the end of those years. It gives you time to raise the money. And that's essentially what we did. We raised money, millions of dollars over the years, to get a down payment and to tie the buildings up, to repair the buildings so they are no longer in disrepair. And in that time, after 4 years, we were capable of getting a loan, which we still have and we're still paying on for the community. The lands at Hillside Farms was founded as a nonprofit because it was intended to belong to the community. It was not intended to belong to any one individual or group of individuals, although there was a group of individuals who came together to do this on behalf of the community. And it was done that way because we felt that one of the key principles of life is that one must care for oneself, one has to be independent, one has to be sustainable. And to do that, the community, in order to earn this, had to help work for it and do things for it and be servant leaders and serve the facility and their community by helping us maintain it. And what the goal was to have the community come forth and help us work this place, volunteer there. And we have literally thousands of volunteers now. Thousands of people come here each year to give of their time, their talent, sometimes money, to help support this facility, maintain it, and grow it. The lands at Hillside Farms was created to be an educational facility. And what that means is we created this place as a backdrop so that when people came here, they could take home principles that were taught at the facility that could change their lives in a positive way. And what that means is that it is our intention that if enough people of the 7 billion of us on this planet could change our ways just enough, a few things with each one of us each day, to change our decisions, that cumulatively, that would add a force towards sustainable ways of living, that in 200 years, those folks would inherit a world that may have all the resources we have now and maybe even more opportunities rather than the opposite. When somebody mentions sustainability, you have to listen because it means different things to different people. You could hear that economically, sustainable economies. You could hear about with the environment more than any other place that I know of sustainable environmental practices. For us, it's not enough to focus on the environment or economics or ways of living. It has to do with how do we get to 200 years from now. This country's been here roughly 200 years, a little more than 200 years. How do we get to 200 years from now and have all the resources, the cultures, the opportunities that we have now, and maybe even more? How do we get to that point? And what is sustainable to us is whatever that mixture of combination of life choices are, that if enough of us do them, that we can get to 200 years from now and offer those people who we will never know the options or the opportunities that we now have plus. I try to give people examples of how to understand what sustainability really is. And it's not that easy because it entails everything we literally do that affects someone else, which is almost everything. And so I try to explain sustainability using a tree concept. If you were to picture a big, broad oak tree standing in a field, you can picture this tree with a great big trunk that holds up the rest of the tree branches. And these main branches breaking off into smaller branches and little branches at the end with leaves. And then it has these deeply rooted structures in the ground, these deep roots in the ground that hold the tree up. And the way I like to explain this is that each function that we have in life, each thing we choose to do, each life choice, each category of life choices represent a branch on that tree. So one might think about how one raises one's child, how one chooses to treat one's body, our physical body, our mind, our soul. How do we address our community? All of these represent a branch on this tree. And if one of those areas in this world fails, how we treat one another, do we love our neighbors properly? Do we raise our kids to be healthy, productive citizens that have individualism and have the capacity to care for themselves and care for others? Each one of these things represents a branch. Each one of these concepts and divisions of life choices represents a branch. And without one of those branches, the tree is weakened. I define it more like the fabric of life as well, not just the tree. In our lives, there's this concept that I like to refer to as this fabric of life. And in it are concepts like individuality and whether we care for our bodies well. How do we care for our neighbors, our families, our friends? Do we love one another? And historically, what held us together were certain concepts that represent that fabric. We got here through the millennia because there were things about us as a community of the world, or as a community of a tribe, or a family, or a country that held us together. And those things include many important concepts that emanate from faith. Loving one another, tight-knit families, honor thy parents, protect the family, love thy neighbor, and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. How you nourished your body, your mind, your soul, whether you were a community steward or not, whether you loved your country, how you cared for your property, how you related to your land. All of these things are the fabric that got us here. And it concerns us because we see some of those parts of the fabric getting frayed. And we're worried about the tapestry holding together. And as you relate that to the tree can only handle so many dead limbs, so many weak limbs, so much damage to it, so much poison to the roots, so many injuries, so many infestations before the tree collapses. And we have to work at this. There's no explained futuristic plan for where we're going in this world. There's no one out there that I know of who gets beyond one particular branch of the tree. They talk about environmentalism, they talk about global warming, they talk about family issues, they talk about how to care for your body, but no one is pulling this together to say, this is the equation that gets us to 200 years in a sustainable fashion so that those people inherit something as good as or better than what we have right now. Some of the basic issues of the fabric that are getting torn from my perspective are family issues. I see families not as tight as they used to be. I see families as they relate to their neighborhoods not as tight as they used to be, as close, as caring. When I grew up in Wilkes-Barre, and I grew up in Knoxon, Pennsylvania. So I had these two extremes. I had the magnificence of the outdoors where there was no one, and a completely pristine, healthy, open space area in the rural mountains of Pennsylvania. And I had a wonderfully vibrant, safe, healthy, economically vibrant city of Wilkes-Barre. The neighborhoods were fantastic. They were not perfect. There were people of all different ethnic backgrounds, and we didn't know the difference. We are all in there in a mesh, and we worked together to have good times as kids. We didn't drive all over. We didn't have a lot of vacations. We played with mud and water and sticks for baseball bats, and it was good. And we were safe, and everyone worked, and they cared for themselves. These are the concepts, these are the roots that we cannot deviate from. So some of the areas that bother me or worry me for the future of this country start with us as individuals. Are we caring for our bodies properly? Look at the statistics on health. We're declining. We're having problems with what we're eating. The foods are not as nutritious. There are actually people considered overweight who are undernourished. That concept sounds like an oxymoron. It seems impossible. But our diets are so full of unhealthy foods that we're literally starving, and yet many of us are obese. It makes no sense. So we're not caring for our bodies as well as we need to. We're not caring for our minds as well as we need to. To a great degree, we're living in isolation. We're playing in front of computers and televisions, whereas when I was a kid, there was very little of that. You went outside and you talked to your neighbors, you walked your dog through a neighborhood, everyone knew you, you were stimulated by your families, you played games. It was simpler, and yet it was sustainable. There are many misconceptions about the lands at Hillside Farms. Some people think that we're owned privately, which we're not. It was purchased from a family, and now it's owned by the community as a nonprofit organization. It's run by a group of board members who volunteer their time, and a small dedicated staff who could be making a lot more money working somewhere else, yet they stay because they believe in this mission. Another misconception is that we're elitist. I don't know whether it's elite to be standing in manure, shoveling it, and be pushed around by hogs and cows and have chickens land on you, but I don't find that elite. I just like to do it. And it's not owned by anyone, it's owned by us all. So there are many misconceptions like we're not functional, that we're not sustainable ourselves. Well, we're not yet sustainable because we owe bills, and we're a nonprofit. How many nonprofits are almost sustainable economically? People think we're rich because we have this dairy store that's very busy. Well, sure, it's busy. It better be busy because our budget is very large. If all we had to worry about was breaking even to pay for the farm, we'd be fine right now. But our mission is to teach people why this is a value so that this thing can be sustainable into the future and last with a budget that pays for itself and doesn't require huge amounts of inputs from funding from outside sources. So we're almost there, but the truth of the matter is we're only 90% there. 10% of it comes from some very kind, caring people and from the community. And if it weren't for our volunteers, we would fall apart. We wouldn't exist. And it should be that way because the community steps up, volunteers, gives back because it's theirs. And if they stop doing that, then they don't deserve the blessing of having inherited this wonderful place. So the lands at Hillside Farms is this place where our community members can go, not just to get an ice cream cone or to buy healthy products or to take a walk in the mountains or to look at cows or other critters that we have running around. It's a place that ultimately, if we use it right, will teach each of us things that can help us get on a path, that if enough of us get on that same path collectively, we can change the trajectory of this country, of our community, and possibly even of the world. Because it's a backdrop here, a beautiful backdrop with wonderful amenities for all of us to appreciate, that really is there to help us learn whatever that is, that equation that will get us to 200 years from now, whereby those people will inherit a better place than what we have today.